Okay, so we have one more to go. It's going to be transitions group. So just like this, just like I told before, this component is just going to add an element with a random number every time I click on add element, and it's going to remove it if I click remove elements. Real simple. Let's go to the code. So we have two buttons, generate number and remove number. And right here, we are just showing whatever we have on add elements. Add elements, it's just doing a map over the state of items. So if we have a number right here, it's going to be displaying this. So if I do 56 or whatever, it's going to reload the page and we get 56. So, it's just rendering the state. So whenever we click on add elements, it's going to go to generate number. It's going to grab whatever state and it's going to add a random number. And then, of course, it's going to update the state. The application will re-render with the new element and it's going to display the elements. And the same thing happens with remove number. It's going to remove the last number on that state, and then it's going to be setting the state again. Really simple. Okay, so I'm going to remove the 56. I'm going to save it. And now we're going to be using transitions group. Now, the main difference of transitions group with the transition and the CSS transition is that we use this one to render lists. Right here, we are rendering whatever we have inside the array items. So we're going to be using transitions group. That's the main reason. So first, we need to import everything. So we need to import two things. We need to import the CSS transitions group, just like we did before. In CSS transition. Let's start again. Transition, and then a comma, and we need to import transition, and then a group. Just like that, group. Good. So now, of course, everything is going to be from, and then React, transition, and then group. Okay, very good. So now what we need to do, just like we did before, this element, we need to wrap everything inside transitions group. So I'm going to say transitions group, open and close, and I'm going to put everything inside. Good. So now this transition group is going to need pretty much one thing. I'm going to be adding two. So the first one is going to be the component. Now, whenever we specify the component, is going to be what this list is going to be. In this case, since we are using a list, makes sense that we should be using a UL because we're going to be adding lists. But in this case, I'm going to be using a div. So whenever the application renders, it's going to create a div that is going to be containing whatever data we have right here. So if I go, let me add a class name as well so we can see the difference. And this one is going to have a class name of list. So I'm going to inspect. I'm going to add an element. I'm going to select 86. And notice that right here we have div class, and we have the class of list. And inside here we have a div. And this one, again, it's a div. It's not a UL. This is because we said that the component should be a div. So this one works. Good. So now how do we add a transition to each element? Well, now we're going to be using the CSS transition that we imported on the top. I'm going to go right here inside the map, and I'm going to wrap everything inside CSS transition. Okay. Open and close. And just like we did before, this one, there's nothing new right here. Inside CSS transition, I need to start adding the prompts. First one, I'm gonna add the class names. So this one is gonna have a class name of item, and I need to put the timeout. And for now, the timeout, I'm just gonna give it 500 seconds, something fast. Now, since this is a list, and each time we return something, we're going to be returning in a list, an item of that list, we need a key. Remember that with lists, we need to add a key. So I'm going to say key, and it's going to be equal to I, which is the iteration on each iteration inside the map. Makes sense. Now, one more thing, we can have a problem. If we render this, we're going to get the classes. I'm going to put 5 seconds so we can see the classes right here. I'm going to add, I'm going to select, and notice that we have item enter and enter active. And if I add again, item, item enter, and item active. Now, whenever this is done, it's going to be removing and going back to item. But I need to know whether this item is active or not. So again, we're going to be using the onEntered. Same thing we did before. onEntered, it's going to be equal to open and close, and we grab that node and we do something else with that node. So I'm going to be adding a class inside this element. So what we can do, we can access the node, which is whatever information you have right here. And I'm going to say dot, and I'm going to enter the classes. And then I'm going to say add. And now we're going to say, I don't know, active, makes sense? Active. So now if we inspect this, I'm going to add an element, I'm going to select it, and we have item, item enter, enter active, and then item and active. Good. You know, this is working. So this is ready. We have all the classes, and we have the class whenever the element is not active. And if we remove it, it's going to do the exit and remove the element from the list. Very good. So the only thing left is going to be adding the CSS. So okay, I'm going to go to app. I'm going to be going to transitions group and add the classes. The first one is going to be the item, and we can have an opacity of 0. What else? We can have a transform of translate X. Same thing we did before, minus 100%. And what else? We're going to have the transition, and we're going to say all dot. We're going to give it a half a second, and then ease in. Good. Then we have the dot, and then item, and then dot active. And I'm going to put it all at once. I'm going to say item dash enter, and the other class is going to be item dash enter dash active. Okay, and this one is going to be opacity of 1. And what else? A transform of translate X, and this one is going to have a 0%. We're going to hide. We're going to show it. So then we have the exit scenario. So I'm going to say item that exit, then dot, and then item exit, and then dash active. Remember that we had the option to put enter and then exit and set it a true or false, so we didn't have to use the exit active, and we can use the item active. Okay, so let me make this right. And this one is going to be opacity of 0, and then we're going to put transform, and you know, we can hide it again. So translate minus 100%. And that is done. You know, this is going to make the transition. So I'm going to click an add element, and you know, it's doing the transition. Let me check if we have 500. No, we don't have it. I'm going to put in 500 and click an add element, you know, doing the transition. I'm going to add one more, and it's working. And if I remove it, it's going to be removing the element and doing the transition. Real simple. So, you know, it's not that hard to use. Once you get the idea of how this works, it's really simple. But at first, it's kind of weird to learn how to use this. Why we are using a class name, or why we're using a state. That's the tricky part of CSS transitions group. But once you get the idea that you get all the states, it's really simple. All right, so let's go to the next topic. Oh, before we go, of course, you have a lot of different dependencies for transitions. This one is the one that, you know, the main one from React. But you have other dependencies, other components from different vendors. For example, you have one that is going to be called React Move. That's one that's really good. I'm going to go to GitHub. And right here, React Move. So again, it's just like a library, just like a plugin to do transitions. And it's really complete. It's not that easy to use, but of course, you can check this out. Let's see if we can get, just a live example. So you can see what it can do. It's really good. So I'm going to go to examples and, you know, sort value and, you know, really very good transition. Let's go to update. Now it works really well. But again, it's not that easy to use. Of course, you need to do a lot of coding. The end result, it's really cool. But of course, you need to do some work. Look at this. You know, it's good, but it's kind of hard to use. Maybe at the end of the course, if we still have time, we can make a tiny section to show you how to use this. All right, so let's keep moving forward with React, and we're going to be talking about prop types. Let's go to the next section and do that.